Hello, guys. Here's the week one review for everyone. To start, I have my matchup versus Phil. Phil won that matchup 117, or basically 118 to 80. My team had Drew Brees with 16, Devonta Freeman with 11, Brandon Cooks with 10, DeAndre Hopkins with 15, Keenan Allen with 12, and I had the Philadelphia kicker get me 13, although he is now hurt, which sucks for me. Did have some disappointing players. I had Patriots defense get me -4. Peterson get me 2 points. Jimmy Graham get me 2 points. Rob Kelly get me 3. Not much on my bench. Rashard Matthews did okay. Got about 10 points. Had about 3 zeros on the bench. One guy didn't play. The other two didn't play much. Looking at Phil's team here, Phil had a lot of studs this week. Looks like he has a total of 6 guys in his starting lineup that scored double digits, starting with Aaron Rodgers with 17, Lamar Miller with 11, Dalvin Cook with 15. His 2 big hitters this week were Antonio Brown with 24, Tyreek Hill with 23. And he also had Delaney Walker with 11. He had Derek Carr on the bench, who had 19, so could have got some more points if you'd have played him. But you draft A-Rod, you're playing him every week. That's a given. Had one player on bye week on his bench. One guy was 0. A couple disappointers. He had Vikings with 1 point, and he did have Chris Hogan with 3. He does have Danny Amendola, who is going to be out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks with a hamstring injury, so we'll see how he's able to fill in for him there. He had him in the flex. He'll have Jacquizz Rodgers available. He could throw in second tight end or maybe Eric Decker, see if he picks up somebody off the waiver wire here. The next matchup we're going to look at here is going to be Ray and Phillips matchup. Ray won that matchup 109 to 66. And we'll start with Phillips' team here. Had a couple players in double digits. Kirk Cousins with 11 and Todd Gurley with 18. AJ Green basically had 10, same with Crowell. Had Hunter Henry get him 0 points. Nick Novak for Houston got him 0 points. I believe he mentioned something about him not being the kicker anymore, so I hope he pays attention a little bit further moving forward. Other disappointments, Kelvin Benjamin with 3. Devontae Adams had 6. Brandon Marshall with 1.5. His bench, he had Eddie Lacy on the bench, get him basically no points, and not much else there going on. If we look at Ray's team here, he had 5 players in double digits in the starting lineup. David Johnson had 10 points for him before he left with the injured wrist. He is going to be out probably next couple months. So that's a very tough blow there. He was the number 1 pick in our draft, fantasy stud, and he's going to have to figure out a way to try to fill in for him. He had Leonard Fournette with 20, Amari Cooper with 15, Stephon Diggs with 24, and he had the Saints kicker get him 14. Other significant players on his roster, Allen Robinson only got him 2 points, and he tore his ACL in the game, so he is done for the season. That looks to be his number 2, maybe number 3 receiver on his team. Could be maybe even number 4, depending on how you look at it. But clearly he's going to be done, so he's going to have to fill in for him as well. He already has Andrew Luck on the bench, who's going to be out again this week, and we don't really know what the timetable is for his return. He has Danny Amendola as well, who I believe had a head injury during the game, so his status is probably questionable going into this week as well. So a lot of injuries for Ray to deal with, but he starts off the season with a nice victory, and I'm sure he'll be able to pull through. Obviously, he'll be spending some of that fab budget this week to pick up some players to fill in some of those holes. The next matchup we got here, we have Michael versus David. Michael won that one 92 to 82. And we'll start here looking at David's team. David really just had two players basically in double digits. Dak Prescott was 17 and Mark Ingram basically got 10. Oh, he did also had Terrence West with 14. He had some scores on his bench. Randall Cobb had 13 on the bench. Chris Thompson basically had 14 on the bench. Corey Davis with 10 on the bench. Some guys who didn't do so well for him. Texans defense with 2. Greg Olsen with 3. T.Y. Hilton with 5. And he just had some other guys just not quite perform great. But, I mean, did okay. It's just, obviously you can't have, half your team or even a little bit more do just okay in a week. You got to get some touchdowns in there. If we look over here at Michael's team, he had 5 players with double digits. Cam Newton with 13, so not a great day for Cam, not with 13 points. Marshawn basically had 10. He had Adam Thielen with 20. Jason Witten with 15, and the Bills defense with 10. Had Matthew Stafford on the bench with 27 points. I believe he was one of the top scoring. He was either the top or behind Alex Smith, top scoring quarterback this week. So definitely could have got some more points there. Luckily, it didn't cost him a victory this week. Not much to speak of on his bench. He actually benched the Seahawks defense, which actually paid off for him. So possibly a risky move for some people, but ended up paying off for him. He does have Mike Evans on the bench who was on bye week, so he'll be a pretty big contributor for him. As far as players who didn't perform, he had Tyler Lockett with 1 point, Emmanuel Sanders with 4, Joe Mixon had 4. Everybody else looks pretty decent or did all right, just maybe didn't score this week. Next up here we have the game of the week. These were 2 of the top 4 teams last year in our league, Ray and Garrett, or Ray Sr. and Garrett. And Ray Sr. lost this one by 0.3 points. So this came down to the very last game of the night, as both of them had contributors in that very late Monday night game. And by the luck of basically 3 yards by Melvin Gordon probably, Garrett was able to pull this one out. So we'll look at Garrett's team first here. He had 4 players scoring double digits. Melvin Gordon to lead the way with 16 points. Crabtree had 11. Pierre Garçon had 11. And the Tennessee kicker for him, Ryan Suckup, had 11. He did have Roethlisberger on the bench, who had 16, who would have definitely helped him win this one a little easier by putting him in over Russell Wilson. Other guys in his lineup, he had Chiefs defense, who only got him 2 points. Kenny Britt with 2 points. Those are kind of his couple downfalls there. Everybody else did all right. Nothing significant on his bench. He did have Jay Ajayi on the bench, who was on bye week, so he'll be able to plug him in moving forward, and that should give his team a little bit of a boost there. Looking over here at Ray Sr.'s team, looks like he had 5 players in double digits. Tom Brady with 11, Jordan Howard with 14, Theo Riddick with 12, Marvin Jones with 11, and Kyle Rudolph with 10. He did have J.J. Nelson on the bench with 12.8. If he could have put him in at any of the receiver spots or the flex spot, that would have won him the week. Same if he would have put Mohamed Sanu or even Kendall Wright in for Zay Jones. Just any little bit of extra points would have given him the benefit this week. Really the only player who didn't play well for him, I would say, would be Zay Jones, who only had 3 points. Everybody else had 6 or more. Maybe 6 out of Jordan Reed's not really what you want, but in a way, you're just kind of glad to see him out there, given his injury history and the fact that he made it through the game healthy. Not too much on his bench here. He did have Deshaun Jackson on the bench, who was on bye week, so I'll be able to utilize him moving forward. The next matchup we have here, we got 2 to go. We have Joseph versus George. Joseph won this one pretty easily 139 to 91. And I'm trying to get it pulled up here. We'll start with George's team here. He had 4 players in double digits. Had Matt Ryan with 18, Jonathan Stewart with 15, Zach Ertz with 13, and Panthers defense with 14. Did have Austin Hooper on the bench, who had 20. Clearly did not set his lineup prior to the game Sunday, or he was either just hoping for a miracle because he left Odell Beckham in the game, who ended up not playing, so he got a 0 for that. Basically, in my mind, about an hour before kickoff, they had, or sometime Sunday morning, they had basically said Odell Beckham was like 90% not going to play because I own him in a league, so I definitely made sure to take him out. Clearly, George either was taking the risk or just forgot. Obviously, he's the only one who knows that. Other guys who may have underperformed, Adam Vinatieri with 2 points here for him. And, Frank Gore basically only had 6. Everybody else did decent or just all right for his team there. Nothing big on the bench. Did have Kenny Stills, who might be all right for Miami this year. Everybody else just not a great week there. And if we look at Joseph's team here, had 6 players in double digits, starting with Tyrod Taylor with 19, LaShawn McCoy with 18, Jeremy Maclin with 13, Gillislee with 23, Jaguars defense with 29, and Matt Bryant with 12. Also had Ty Montgomery on the bench with 17. And, not much else there. Does have 2 players on the bench who were on bye week. Doug Martin was on bye week. He's obviously suspended. Won't be back till, I believe, week 5. And Jarvis Landry on bye week as well. Really, most of his players pretty much, performing. Nothing lower than 6 points in his lineup, so nothing crazy there. Just obviously had a big week out of Gillislee. Tyrod Taylor performed very well, and huge week out of the Jaguars defense. In my mind, probably a little surprising. I know they're improved defense this year, but I didn't expect Houston to really drop the ball quite as bad as they did there. And the last matchup we have here is Dakota versus Dalton. And Dakota won this matchup 156 to 112. Dakota led the league in scoring this week. But to start, first we will look at Dalton's team. Dalton had 6 players in double digits, starting with Marcus Mariota with 19, Carlos Hyde with 11, Jordy Nelson with 17, Terrell Pryor with 10, Steelers defense with 19, and Dan Bailey with 15. Did have Devontae Parker on the bench, who's on bye week. Nothing of real concern on his bench. Really the only player who really underperformed for him, I guess a couple guys, would be Gronk with only 4 points and Martavis Bryant with 2. Obviously, you expect those guys to perform a little better. Obviously, he had the hardest matchup this week going against the top scorer, so we'll see if he can turn it around next week. And then if we look at Dakota's team here, he had 6 players in double digits, starting with Carson Wentz with 19, Ezekiel Elliott with 17, Fitzgerald with 10, Golden Tate with 16, Kareem Hunt with 43, and the Rams defense with 29. Nobody on his bench really did anything except LeGarrette Blount did have 11 points. Does have Winston on the bench, who was on bye week, and also has Willie Snead, who is now suspended. Players who kind of underperformed for him, I've been saying 6 points is pretty decent, but that's not, in my mind, it's not decent for Le'Veon Bell. Drafting him number 2 in the draft, you definitely expect double-digit points every week, especially against the Cleveland Browns, so that's a little bit of a disappointment there. Des Bryant only had 5 points, and his tight end, Tyler Eifert, basically gave him a point. Obviously, having him healthy is good, but Cincinnati really, really struggled this week. So that does it for Week 1 matchup reviews. Updated power rankings are on the league page. There's not a drastic change in the rankings, obviously after just 1 week. Dakota does move up to number 2. Ray, even though he won, drops down to number 4. A lot of that has to do with the fact that a chunk of his team is hurt, and that's going to probably make it difficult for his team to stay on their winning ways. Good luck in the next week. Waivers will process for the first time this week tomorrow at noon. So everybody make sure you get your claims in. See ya.